We are the world in one city, a precious yet hidden gem. Representatives of every continent, a place often forgotten and casted aside, but clearly our beauty is hard to hide. Take a ride with me and explore the pride bursting inside of this great, beautiful place we call Scarborough. And discover a kaleidoscope of faces representing the globe. These faces etch the magnificence I call home. These eyes tell stories of culture and acceptance. Smiles that symbolize our reverence. Landmarks near and dear to our hearts. Look within and decipher what truly sets Scarborough apart.
My name is Carlo Balagase, and I'm a co-founder and co-owner of a fitness and wellness facility called Strengthen You. I actually grew up in Scarborough. I used to go to a high school called Jean Vanier High School over on Midland and Eglinton. My first experience there was that it was a culture shock, especially for me. The vast amount of cultures that are in Scarborough and the way they're so unapologetic about who they are was very inspiring for me specifically, because as a colored person myself, Filipino, it opened me up to be who I should be, who I am, and it opened me up also to learn more about people, to learn more about other cultures and get inspired by that as well. You know, we didn't know it growing up, but this is the future of the world, where everybody comes together and there is no more lines between cultures and stuff like that. So we're ahead of the game. A big part of my growing up in Scarborough was breakdancing in the rec center, breakdancing in, VP station, all the stations we meet up with the group. So my crew, shout out to Climax crew, they're no longer around, but we used to practice in our high school, practice in the hallways and stuff like that, from Monday to Friday. And then Friday night we would meet up at town center with other crews and we would battle. A lot of times these battles weren't aggressive battles, it was more to sharpen our skills and to be part of an amazing underground community where everybody was saying that Scarborough was full of thugs and all this stuff and all this negativity. The part of Scarborough I grew up in was so far away from that. It was unity, it was diversity, it was celebrating who we are, celebrating our personal cultures and dance and art. That's why a huge part of this business was because of those experiences, the understanding about music. I DJ'd heavily after as well. So we use a lot of our techniques that we used to throw parties back in the day, in DJing, getting people riled up and having fun and moving. The way we spoke, our tonality, the way we dropped music and the way we battled. I took all of that and we kind of formatted these tidbits into our group classes. And that caught fire. And that's one of the big reasons why we blew up in this business, is the understanding of culture, understanding that diversity has no boundaries, that music and art, which is so cultivated in the Scarborough community because they didn't give us anything else but that.
I am Marianne Chambers. I lived in Scarborough for 28 years. Came here from Jamaica with my husband and 2 little boys. It was the very best place to raise my sons. I served on the board of the Rouge Valley Health System here. That's the Centenary Hospital, the Ajax Pickering Hospital. I saw Scarborough as home without reservation. I remember a television station coming to my campaign office and saying that they were really uncomfortable being in Scarborough. The fellow said he hadn't been here before. I said, well, let's leave my office. We're going for a drive. He was shocked by what I was able to show him, the beauty of Scarborough, the lakefront, the amazing parks, rivers. In fact, I have found myself on more than one occasion saying to people who are unfamiliar with Scarborough, you really ought to leave the 401, get off the 401 and get to know Scarborough better.
I moved to Toronto, Scarborough 10 years ago from Montreal when I went to school. So very similar cities in terms of lots of multiculturalism. Living in Scarborough is definitely different than in other places. When I originally moved to Toronto, I was in the west end of the city and I relocated for work. It's quite different from any really other place that I've lived in. I've lived in quite a few places, bounced around because I'm an army brat when I was a kid. And it's weird because it's the only place that I've actually felt like I've been home. And I think that's just because people, they tend to slow down a little bit more. We're still part of Toronto, which is like this big bustling city, but you can take a step back, enjoy a really good meal. You go to any, restaurant that's not part of like the culture that you come from, and people welcome you with a smile on their face, and if you need an explanation about what the food is, like you'll get recommendations, and then you get to experience where other people came from. When you talk about what Scarborough has done for me, it's really where I established my business. I call it home. I plan on staying here for the rest of my life. So, it's just, I get the best of both worlds. A bit of home, a bit of new. There's amazing people, amazing community. So that's what Scarborough is about.
His death changed my whole outlook on what I needed to do. And I think it was important for anybody to have these moments in life in a way that what's going to be your changing, your I don't know, I wouldn't say your outcome, but your recalibrating your thoughts of what needs to be done, right? So for his passing, for me, this totally changed me in a different place of really changing my perspective of what I want to get done as an artist. Because we're all, like I said, we live in a short period of time, right? And I just want to do my part in just really telling that. It united a flame inside myself of not just existing, but living what your true purpose is. And that's for me was just being an artist. So reconnecting myself back to what it is was this guy. I met Sean through the YMCA. That's where, like I say, talk about community and spaces and safe spaces. YMCA, when it was developed, that's where everybody resided. Before the Malvern Community Center was already been established, but when the Y opened up beside the Scarborough Town Center, everybody came from If you're a ball player, whatever that is, everybody came to the YMCA. And that's where I met Sean. And we just connected from there, man. And I kind of guess, we talked about spaces that are family oriented, that's one place that actually, you can connect with the community as a whole. And you build real bonds with people that you still have up to this day. And even when they pass, you still build these bonds, right? And he definitely, like I said, impacted me in a way to make me not forget him. You really got to figure out what it is within yourself that actually defines who you are and actually put the full 100% effort in, right? Because you never know what's gonna happen. You never know how long your life is gonna be here. So whatever's in you, get rid of it. Get rid of all that talent and put it out there to the world so at least they can just, you know what I mean? See your value. Because the worst thing is having it with you when you're dead. That's the worst thing, because nobody's never got to see it.
I think what Scarborough did for me growing up was that it gave me adventure. We had everything from suburban streets to forest areas, dirt roads, hills, cliffs. We had the Scarborough Bluffs. There was different types of terrain that we had access to. So because of the geography and how it was so diverse in such a, I guess, in a space of its own, I was able to experience different things whenever I chose to. With my collective, Beaumont Co., we created these shirts that had Scarborough on it without the vowels. And I guess our whole objective was to paint a different type of branding for Scarborough. We usually see Scarborough t-shirts in I like to call them Microsoft Word font designs, and we wanted to give the Scarborough name a little bit more of an artistic design, an artistic look. And I think, words are powerful, names are powerful. And so we came up with this design, as well as, commemorated the Scarborough flag. And what we wanted to do was paint a better Scarborough, a Scarborough brand, and have people within Scarborough wear it as a flag to represent Scarborough in more of an artistic light.
We represent 1/3 of the GTA, beautiful people and lush green space. Home of the Bluffs and home of the Rouge, just like these spaces, we also bloom. We bloom like roses out of concrete cracks, branching from every continent on the map, inhabitants beyond the East End subway tracks. You don't truly know Scarborough without visiting Scarborough Museum, Pan Am, or Town Center. Can't forget Scarborough Arts, or visiting Morningside, Thompson, or Port Union parks. We are surrounded by trees, but we stay rooted even when we leave.
My name is Sean Clement, and I'm a teacher at the Toronto District School Board. What makes it different teaching in Scarborough than anywhere else in the city is kind of a parallel to growing up in Scarborough. Your class is full of all these different cultures, and throughout the school year, you spend your time introducing all the kids to each other's cultures. You bring in different foods. Anytime there's a festival like Diwali or Chinese New Year, you're showing the class and letting them learn about it, Hanukkah, things like that, and introducing them to it. And they don't see it as being different, they just see it as being this cool thing they get to do, learning about each other. The comic room is a Scarborough institution. A lot of customers think that, I think that, hopefully the owner thinks that. It's been here 40 years, and it's been passed down through multiple owners. And those multiple owners have been fans of the comics, or they've worked here all that time. The original owner passed it on to the current owner, who worked here since he was 14, and all the customers have been coming here that whole time, and they're like family. We've watched them have their kids get married. We've been invited to weddings, to family functions, and it's just a gathering place in Scarborough where people can come, hang out, talk about something they love, which is comic books or pop culture, whatever it is, and enjoy themselves and just hang out, be treated like friends and family. It's just a cool place to be.
Paperback Exchange has been somewhat of a Scarborough landmark. In my youth growing up, my friends and I, we lived at like McCann and Steele's, and we used to, bike ride all the way down here to get the latest comic books and just kind of, get the newest issues of our favorite superheroes, to fuel up. We'd stop at a Max or a Becker's back in the day and fuel up on a slushie and then hit the road and come back up and read our comic books and just chill out. Right? So I even still do that today. My favorite character is Spider-Man with great powers, great responsibilities. So I even, as a comic book fan today, even still implement that into my what I teach my students on the education side as well. So a lot of great themes to be learned, and I'm just kind of glad I've always kept that with me. Scarborough is definitely a mosaic city. Even to this day, whenever I have my students before me at the beginning of the year, I always make them aware of the pride that they should have in Scarborough. In the GTA, Toronto on a whole, we are the most diverse city on the planet, believe it or not. Not New York, not Los Angeles. You will find every facet of, life or every culture across the globe is here in one place, living together, working together, striving for excellence, and uplifting each other and sharing at the same time.
Anyone who's lived in Scarborough their whole life, they know about the parks. There's Thompson Parks and Rosetta McLean Gardens and the Guildwood Park, and they're all different from each other. If you want to have a big festival, you go to Thompson Park. If you want to see beautiful gardens, you roll up to Rosetta McLean Gardens. And Guildwood Park, which is a very artsy park, and all of the old buildings that used to be in downtown Toronto and that were torn down during the 70s, there's pieces of them all over Guildwood Park. And it's an amazing piece of Toronto history that we have in the heart of Scarborough. And most people in Toronto probably don't realize the plethora of beautiful spaces like those parks that exist in Scarborough.
I believe everybody's put in a certain place and time for them to get through challenges, which bring them to the glory or to the triumphs that they were supposed to reach. So yeah, there were challenges growing up in Scarborough, or at least for me. I wasn't really, I was like a sick kid. I grew up in and out of the hospitals, as I had scoliosis and I was wearing a back brace when I was in the 8th and 9th grade. So it's not that I didn't have a lot of friends, but I didn't have a lot of confidence. And, when I was coming out of high school and going into university, I was really trying to figure out what defines me and what makes me different from other people and what was I good at. And, I always thought I was a pretty okay artist, so I picked up a bunch of different hobbies, and jewelry is the one where I started doing it. Everybody in my community was like, whoa. It was really in Scarborough that my friends and my family supported me to keep doing jewelry. And, that expanded beyond my community to the whole Toronto area, to now all the places that I've traveled because of my jewelry business. And my affinity towards doing community work, specifically with women of color. There used to be the Malvern Spot. That's the first place I went, and I had a mentor. Her name was Femi James, and she this was like right before I started making jewelry. She gave me my first job reference. She was the first person to ever like sit me down and like make me feel like my ideas were important, because I was one of the youth on the steering committee for the design of the spot before they even opened. Me feeling like she believed in me and like was taking my words seriously and wanted me to be involved in the designing of a space that was going to be that important for the community. I feel like, you know, Malvern Public Library and the spot will always have a very special place in my heart. This spot here, Old Kingston Park. You know, I used to come here with my friends after school because I went to Pope, which is not that far away. Always very, very special to me to just come into nature, whether it's like winter or any spring, fall, summer, any type of weather in this space always made me feel connected to, you know, the fact that I'm not just an ego. I'm part of a humongous ecosystem. I'm a tiny part, but also I'm a huge part. And it matters what I do. The positivity that I bring helps all of it to remain going in a positive direction.
Hey, yeah, 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 hey, yo, whoa, 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 oh. Now is the time, it's about to begin. Take a leap forward like champions. Set your sights to what's big and believe. It's time to shine, chase your dreams. Hey, yeah, 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 hey, yo, whoa, 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 oh. Hey, yeah, 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 hey, yo, whoa, 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 oh. Just the beginning and we're already winning. Top of the world, throw your hands up. Taste the drink of glory from the champions cup. Wave your flags and unite when the torch burns high. Hey, yeah, 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 yo, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, yeah, 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 hey, yo, whoa, whoa, whoa.
You know, when I think about Scarborough, I think about, you know, just an environment that built me to what I am today. An environment that helped me face adversity wherever I was in the world. An environment that taught me a lot about various cultures, various ethnic groups, you know. One day you'd go to your friend's house and he's Trini, and you know, you get to learn language. Next day you go to your friend's house and he's Bayesian, you pick up the Bayesian accent. Next day you go to your friend's house, he's Jamaican, you pick up Jamaican accent. Then you go to friend's house, he's Indian, you pick up Indian. You go Greek, Italian. So I really liked that. I really enjoyed the various cultures. You know, I remember I was like 8 years old and I went to my friend's house and I fell in love with the greatest thing I don't know how they hid this from me, was Nutella. You know, I was like, man, how are you hiding the chocolate on the bread? I'm like, you guys are crazy. Like, how come in the West Indies we didn't think about this, you know? And that just blew my mind, you know, and I always have that fond memory about, you know, my first time eating chocolate on a bread. I was like, this is the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. And it's experiences like that I think, you know, you don't really get in a lot of places. And I've been fortunate to travel the world through my sport. And, you know, I think Scarborough provides such a rich, multicultural environment. Growing up in Scarborough, you have a lot of people that influenced me. I think, you know, there's a lot of teachers. There's coaches, mentors. Growing up, that was a big part of my life. One first and foremost was my dad. Always take me to practice, to and from practice. He was my coach from Malvern. Malvern Magic, the first Malvern Magic. He was a no-nonsense type of coach. He taught us discipline, but he was before his time because he taught us about rhythm, got us into the Brazilian mythology of football. A community raised a child. It wasn't you know, your parent there, your parents there, you do your thing, your parents. It was such an energy, such a good vibe. And even playing with Malvern, you know, after games, parents would bring like food, of various culture food, but most of the team was West Indian, so it'd be like, music playing, food after. It was just joy, and I think it was a special moment in our life because regardless of what we were going through, sport, soccer, basketball was an outlet for us, and as well as it was a great way for us to bond, with the music and the energy and the cooking and that kind of vibe.
Growing up in Scarborough, it really developed the passion that I have for basketball. Being part of the game was something that I really wanted to be in. And so education is definitely very important in my culture, but I knew that I wanted to be part of basketball, part of the game. No matter what involvement I had, whether if it's a coach, a player, I just wanted to be part of it. And so I actually graduated as a civil engineer. I did it for 2 years full time, but I knew my heart laid with basketball. And so I left an opportunity with civil engineering to go with Ontario basketball. It was such an amazing opportunity for me because it allowed me to network with like-minded people like myself, which helped me excel in the position that I am today. Working with the NBA, there's a lot of close ties that I have with Scarborough because it taught me so many things about networking, multiculturalism, being able to know more about every culture. And it's funny because basketball really brought people together. It's something that going to a court and just saying, hey, would you like to play one-on-one? Can I be part of this game? That's where friendships are built. That's where, for me, basketball is everything. It really brought me to where I am today. Being in places like West Hill, T.L. Kennedy, Pope, Mother Teresa, those are some of the venues that I've practiced in. And the culture of basketball is so enriched in their schools. Scarborough had really taught me to be determined, go-getter. It allowed me to not take no for an answer and really chase after what you really want.
I chose to go into journalism, and part of the reason why I did that was because I actually wanted to try to make a change in terms of how Scarborough was represented in the media and how particularly young people in Scarborough were represented in the media. Now, I haven't made that. I can't change an entire industry, but I think that I've done work along the way that has helped to make small changes. And one of the things was starting Urbanology. So it put people from Scarborough, young people from Scarborough, in charge of a media outlet. And another thing was to start the Say Word program, which gave the skills to young people in Scarborough to create their own media. So there's a distinct culture about Scarborough, and particularly different pockets of Scarborough, that sets it apart from other parts of the city. Maybe 5-6 years ago, or maybe when he was running for Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau released this statement where he was saying that, you know, the Canada that he knows is where he can go to like one friend and eat one type of food, and then go to another friend and experience a different type of culture. And that was in the 2000s, and he was talking about it like it's, you know, a new revelation. And one of my friends that I went to high school with posted on Facebook the video and then put a caption, "This is what it was like growing up in Scarborough, in Malvern." And I think what's unique about communities like Malvern and Scarborough is that we were ahead of the curve. What I actually did was I took that and wrote a column about it in the Scarborough Mirror, saying that as Canada across the country tries to learn how, like, best practices around multiculturalism, it's communities like this that they should be tapping into to learn about how that works best.
There was a bunch of us in Galloway at the time, and we used to hang out at 4301. We called it the White Building, 4301 Kingston Road. That's where I first fell in love with the game of basketball and with the community on a whole. Now, the funny thing about our community in Galloway is that a whole bunch of us as little kids used to go to the rec center. So 4301 at that time had a pool in the basement. It had a recreation room. But most of all, it had the famous Galloway gym. Tiny gym made of tile. The roof was a little higher than the ceiling in your house. So as a result, guys that played out of Galloway can take the ball to the hole, but the shooting wasn't our thing because the roof was way too low. As a little kid, I remember going out there with our friends, just hanging out, watching guys like Lou Golding play, watching guys like, we call them Reds, play, watching guys like Wesley, they call them Pancho Villa, play, watching guys like Donovan Williams. And we never had the Raptors or the NBA like they have today. So those were our heroes from back in the day. So as little kids, we just sat on the bench, and then people used to come from all over the GTA in order to play. And so we used to sit there as little kids and watch them play. And if they did a move, sure enough, at the hoop the next day, we're doing the move. We're trying to be like them. There was nobody else to aspire to be like. And then when Wilton Grant, called Reds, went to Centennial College, sometimes Centennial, as little kids, used to allow us to go there and watch him play ball. So these were our real life heroes. We work with youth in the community right now. We work with kids out of Mornell Court. We work with kids out of Danzig, of course, Galloway, kids out of Malvern. And so Advantage Basketball was made to give back because somebody gave back to me. And so together, as they say, you know, it takes a village. You know, that village is the community, and our community is Galloway. And even now, we still work together. Some of the guys that I coach have gone on to play pro basketball, and they still come back and give to the young kids in the community. The one thing I do know for sure, I would never be where I am today or anywhere if it wasn't for that community in Galloway and the values that it taught me, and not just for me, but for making my community proud. And I still have that feeling in my heart to make my community proud. And so it's not really just about basketball. It's not about wins and losses. It never is. It's about impacting the lives of kids. It's about making a difference, because when we're gone, long and gone, people will remember It was a guy named Smalling. It was a guy named Mark Stoddart, that changed my life, and the guys that were attached to the community.
Somebody once asked me what, in a conversation around what makes you comfortable and feel at home in a space. And what came to my mind was that feeling when you're in a place that is familiar and you hear a conversation or hear a language that is completely unfamiliar to you. To me, that's Scarborough. It's moving around every day on transit or while driving or walking around in the community. And in 10 to 15 minutes, you've been exposed to 5 different languages, 13 different ethnicities, and very many different ways of being and knowing and moving around an urban / suburban environment. When I think about a couple of spaces that have been really interesting and tell an interesting story about my experience in Scarborough is like the one where we are now at the Toronto Pan Am sports facility here, the Toronto Pan Am Centre. I remember when the games were coming to Toronto, and there was a lot of conversation about what was going to be built in the site, and the conversations and the partnership between the city and the municipality and the University of Toronto, which is my alma mater, about building a space that was not just going to be for the games, but that was really going to be a community establishment and an anchor location where residents and neighbors and citizens and folks who lived in Scarborough could call this place home for a multitude of reasons and the activities that they want to come and do here. The concept of home is one that is central to the work that I do. A lot of the focus of my work is creating the spaces and places where people feel they can say that they're home. And what that means is when you're at home, you feel safe to participate fully in every aspect of your life. Every part of your identity, your ethnicity, race, gender, sexual identity, religion, lack of, all of that is able to live and shine through purposefully and with dignity, right? So it doesn't matter who you are and what you look like. When you're at home, you feel that every single aspect of you is valued and important. I feel that way when I'm in Scarborough because when I look around, I can see that a lot of the people I am interacting with are defining and reshaping and redefining what the landscape looks like and sounds like and feels like.
We are a complex web of diversity, culture, and ambition, of traditional rhythms we've brought here to Scarborough. We are culturally infused, more than just what they tell you on the news. We are the East End, and we belong here too. We are the children of resilient immigrants, first and second generation Canadians, planting seeds in new soils, devoted to hard work as we toil in hopes of brighter tomorrows. We may be casted aside, but never forgotten. Often highlighted with shootings in the news, but we are more. We are good people too. We the masses are not represented by the few. We are a people devoted to change, tired of surviving. We want to thrive, not just maintain. We wear our hearts on our sleeves to show our Scarborough pride. We are Scarborough, proud inhabitants of the East Side.
51 Gilda Drive, apartment 101, M1K 4P7. That was my spot. That's where I grew up. That's what I knew for over 15 years. I got there young, and by the time I left, I could touch the ceiling with my hands without even going on my tippy toes. It's the apartment. It's the vibe. It was the feel. But it was my place. Scarborough. That's where I'm from. That's a spot that I probably know better than most. I know from Gordon Ridge to 400 to Cataraqui. I know spots that people would be able to go from the back of one spot to the other. I know where the lakes are. I know where the creek is to get me to Charles Gordon quicker. I know how to walk to Midland Avenue. I know how to walk to the school that's no longer there. But that's the environment that I grew up in. And the reality is that without that environment, I don't become who I am today. Why? I think the reality is that those of us that have grown up in Scarborough, we sort of grew up allied to each other, realizing that it was more an us against them. It was the kind of feel that you had when you were outside playing basketball and there was another group that came from the West End to try and play on your court to see whether or not they'd be able to take it over. So when you have people like Mervyn Busby, Trevor Willocks, coming down just to show you how to play ball. When you had rec centers that were right there in the middle of your environment that you could go to every day and all day. You could spend time there making jokes, playing cards, playing dominoes. The reality is that we became bonded to each other not because of where we were, but because of who we were, who we are, what we became. We're still lifelong friends even now. So when people talk about Scarborough, we can't help but talk about the various boroughs, the various areas, because we all went to them. We all went to Cut Creator to get our haircuts. We all remember when it opened up. We all remember going down to Markham and Eglinton and to go by Cedar Brae but these were the spots that made us understand that irrespective of where we lived, we knew that we were good. We knew that we were smart. Even though people looked at us a certain way, we still knew that no matter what, come what may, we were relevant. We had a voice, and all we needed to do was say something about it. So sometimes we may look at the end product and say, look at this, but the reality is that product did not get finished unless we were in an environment that made us strong, made us whole, made us humble, made us understand what a dollar meant. So when we're talking about Scarborough, we're not talking about a place, a spot on a map. We're talking about a monument, a place that made us who we were, that made us stand stronger, made us feel better, made us listen to music, watching people breakdancing outside of your buildings. Like, that was the vibe of the day. That was how we raised, that's how we felt. And so that animosity that people may talk about now where they're talking about Scarborough, trust me, it's not there. It wasn't there when we were there. It may be something that people say is there, but when you go into those communities, it's not the same. We call each other's moms moms. So I don't go to Wayne Brooks's house and not knock on the door and say, Mrs. Brooks. I say, hey mom, how you doing? She says, are you good? I say, I am. She brings me in and gives me something to eat. When we're all walking to school together, we're building what it is that we believe is going to be important for us come what may down the road. And that is that we are building in ourselves a sense of identity. So when you talk about Scarborough, make sure you know that I'm proud about it. Make sure that you understand that when I talk about Scarborough, it's not something that I'm saying I'm distancing myself from. I put myself right there at Midland and Eglinton, right in Gilder. That was where I was from. That's how I get to where I am. And that's how I am who I am today.